Well, hi, I'm Jeff Strong. I'm creator of Rhythmic Entrainment Intervention and co-founder and creative director of BrainShiftRadio.com. In this week's video, I want to talk about using complex, fast drumming rhythms to help with people who have sound sensitivities. I work with a lot of people with sound sensitivities, a lot of children, especially children on the autism spectrum. It's a really common trait. It is also kind of falls into two different categories. One category is kind of just overall overwhelm. So a cafeteria at the school, or just the loudness of all the kids in the classroom, or the bus driving to school, or even the car, the family car driving along the highway. Just too much input from an auditory perspective, and the inability to filter that down to what's relevant, what's important. So everything becomes in at super high volume. How do you filter it? How do you turn down the stuff that doesn't matter and turn up the stuff that does? One of the classic examples of people with autism is that they will be in their own world. They'll kind of shut the world out. And I believe that a good portion of that is that they become overwhelmed by all the sensory input. And they don't know how to discern what's important or not. It all comes in at a high volume. And so their only real response is either to lash out or shut down. So that's one aspect of sensory sound sensitivities. Another is having a very specific sound pattern that bothers a person. And on the flip side of that, so in this instance, the filtering mechanism is okay. This individual was able to filter out extraneous noise into the background and key into a specific sound. Unfortunately, there are particular sounds that become too much, and because then that person can't shut it out, it just overwhelms them. And again, you either get shutting down or lashing out. Generally, in this instance, it's a tantrum or some sort of an outburst behavior to try and get that to stop. But on the flip side of that is the ability of what a lot of families describe to me as their children have superhuman hearing, that they're able to hear things that other people don't. In my book, Different Drummer, I talk about this one kid I met early on in my research when I was actually going to people's houses. I would show up at somebody's house and play in their living room and never having met the kid before. And in this instance, I pulled up to this very rural family's home, and the mother described that her son heard me coming from 5 minutes away. And she said he gets really excited when the UPS truck comes because he can tell it's the UPS truck. But in this instance, he couldn't tell who I was, and he got very distressed. So, but he was able to hear the difference between different vehicles coming towards his house. And as well, he was one of these kids who became overwhelmed by particular sounds. In his case, the vacuum cleaner was the worst thing. And so my goal was to help him not get overwhelmed by these particular sounds, partly to help him with that particular noise, that particular whine of the vacuum cleaner. How do I turn that down? How do I help him become more desensitized to it? So that's my goal with somebody like that. In my early research, my very first formal study, which was done in a public school in the St. Paul, Minnesota area, I set up a room with the psychologist in that facility where I would play for each kid because I wanted to make custom recordings. This is the very beginning of custom-made recordings where I went beyond just playing live for somebody, seeing their response, and adjusting my playing. What I wanted to do is I wanted to play for them, see how they responded, and then make a recording for them to listen to daily for 8 weeks to see what kind of changes there might be. So I wanted to see more than just what would happen when I was playing at that moment and a couple minutes afterwards. What happens if they get regularly exposed to it? Can we desensitize them in general? And I remember in that particular study where there were quite a few students who were brought to me by the teachers saying, you know, there's no way you're going to be able to play this drum for this child in that room. And that room was a small 8 by 8 foot study room, which had cinder block walls and a concrete floor and a acoustical tile ceiling. It was very loud, it was very reverberant. I had this drum, or actually the one just slightly smaller than this. This is a 12.5-inch drum. I had the 11-inch drum there. It's a little bit less bass tone, but it's still a very powerful drum. And when I hit this loud, it can really be at a high volume. And so in every instance, when those kids came into that room and I played for them, I could play at full volume, and I never had a kid covering his ears and screaming or showing any discomfort to what I was playing. Now, there's a trick to what I did here in order to make that happen, because I can't just willy-nilly go in and just play any rhythm at super high volume and expect a positive response. Have to go in a particular way. So let me show you an example of what I do in that instance. So if I'm dealing with somebody with sound sensitivity and I want to play for them live and I want to calm them down and I want to help them get a little bit used to this stimulus and get them to be able to tolerate more auditory input than they have in the past, I'm going to start off with muted tones. The start of this video, actually, I played this concept, but I'm going to show it to you now. I'm going to start with muted tones, and I'm going to throw in some extra louder tones in the process, and then I'm going to slowly open up the rhythms, and then I'm going to raise the volume as I'm doing it. So it'll sound like this.